Okay, right, I'm going to crack on because there's a bit to get through. But first, I just want to say thank you so much for being here and prioritizing early years practice. It's such an important phase of school. So thank you so much. And I'm super excited to be sharing this space with all of you. And I hope we can kind of use this session to share ideas and support each other. And I also hope that this can go some way in helping you to appreciate the magic of what you all do. So share ideas, use the chat. No idea is a silly idea or a silly question. And I just want this to be a really open forum where we can share ideas. There will be a couple of times where I'll ask for popcorn. When I ask for that, if you just unmute and just kind of shout things out at me so that we can all hear it. So it's just kind of like a quick fire response. Okay, I am going to start off with a story. It's a beautiful story, and we know that picture books are so fundamental to what we do in early years. And as I read, I just want you to not only think about your endless potential as a person, but also that of the little ones in your class as well. This is called Maybe. Have you ever wondered why you are here? You are the only you there ever has been or ever will be. You have so much to offer. Maybe you will invent something that no one has ever seen before. Maybe you will build things that reach high into the sky. Your life is yours. Try as many things as you can try. See as much as you can see. Wherever you go, take your hopes, pack your dreams, and never forget, it is on journeys that discoveries are made. Maybe you will help others to see the beauty in each day. Or maybe you will lift cheering crowds onto their feet. Do everything with love, follow your heart and see where it leads you. Maybe you're here to shine a light into places that have been dark for far too long. Maybe you will speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. Maybe you're here to help in only ways that you can. There will be struggles, there will be fears, and it won't always be easy. At times it will feel really hard, and you might make a mess of things. You may fall down. You may fail. But you will also get back up and you will rise a little stronger and a little taller, because there really is more inside you than you know. And this world needs your gifts, your talents, your big ideas. And maybe you are just getting started. What if you are only scratching the surface of what you can do and who you can be? What if you have talents you haven't discovered yet? There is something powerful, even magical, about you. You already have everything it takes to do big things. Maybe you have no idea just how good you really can be, and maybe you don't know how much you matter. But maybe, just maybe, the world has been waiting centuries for someone exactly like you. One thing is for sure, you are here. And because you are here, anything is possible. So I just wanted to share that really wonderful, beautiful picture book with you. And it's nice to have a bit of story time as an adult as well. So just a little breakdown of what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at what continuous provision is, what that term means. We'll reflect and kind of think about our EYFS staples in our continuous provision. We'll explore the importance of harnessing the power of play in our provision. And we will look at also some of those other elements that we need beyond play that support us to make our provision to be as purposeful and effective as it can be. I'll also share some further reading with you guys if that's interesting, and then we will end by just having some time to share some ideas. Okay, so what is continuous provision? It is something that is kind of shrouded in a lot of mystery for people who don't work in early years. But taking the definition from early education, it refers to the resources and learning opportunities that are accessible to children all of the time within a provision. When developed well, it will invite children to interact, explore, and of course, learn. So really, continuous provision is at the heart of what we do in EYFS, and it really is the space where so much learning takes place. There are things that are always available in our environment, and sometimes these are enhanced to support specific units of work. So if you can just unmute and just popcorn ideas of the things that make up your continuous provision, if you do work in early years, that would be amazing.
Mark making area.
Amazing, fantastic, thank
Fine
you.
motor.
Sound and water, absolutely.
Construction.
Amazing, yep.
Fine motor.
Fine motor for sure, just physicality in general, definitely.
Role play.
Yep, role play, absolutely. Fantastic. Yeah, so all of these things that are available all the time, and absolutely that's all those different elements of learning. And actually, when you hear yourself shout it out, you should appreciate how much thought has to go into early years practice. There's so many elements and areas of development and provision that we need to be thinking about at one time. So big up yourselves. It's a lot to think about. It really is a lot to think about. So what makes continuous provision effective? This is a quote taken from Greg Bottrell's book, Can I Go and Play Now? And if you haven't read it, I would really, really recommend it. I read it a few months ago, and it really made me rethink a lot of my early years practice. A lot of the ideas I'll share draw on Greg Bottrell's work. And as he would put it, you know, I'm aiming to kind of explore our learning landscape. So effective continuous provision is open-ended, accessible, flexible, large-scale, and skills-driven. It is planned, but only in a loose sense. An adult's plan isn't a child's plan. Children don't have to reach a specific outcome determined by the adult. Instead, continuous provision should offer an index of possibilities. It should enable children to bring their magic with them into the environment and shape it. Equally, it should create the conditions for collaboration and self-chosen purpose. So for me, what I really want to focus on this session is kind of that index of possibility and letting play shine. And I think there is such a danger of complicating our continuous provision, which I've 100% been guilty of. You know, the prettier it looks, all the better, and the more letters that are hidden in the sand, the better. But you know, again, an adult's plan isn't a child's plan. So just really thinking, how are we offering the maximum possibility for children to show us themselves as learners, but also explore play. So the key thing with our continuous provision is choice. And we know that play is all about choice, okay? Children, when they're playing, they choose when to begin their play, they choose when to end their play. They choose the area, they choose the resources. So really the fundamental of play is having that choice. And when we see children choosing these things, we're actually showing them that we value them, that their choices are valued, and they are involved in their own learning. Seeing children as well for us, like as an assessment opportunity, is also huge, because seeing them make these independent choices allows us to see their magic and to learn about them. And you'll all know that children often surprise you with how they use a particular resource, something that was not the intended outcome, but there they go, they've remixed it and they're using it in such a spectacular way, and it teaches you a lot about them. And it's important that when we think about our continuous provision planning, if we overplan some of these areas, we can actually end up limiting learning. You know, certain children may not play with it because they're not into pirates. You've set up a pirate scene, and they might not play with it because they're not into pirates. So having those elements of choice within your continuous provision does make it inclusive. And we want to kind of be adventuring with the children through their learning journey, working together with them and sharing those experiences. And I mean, as Pep said earlier, choice can be motivating, but it can also create the conditions for what he called choice paralysis. So it's really thinking about how can we make our continuous provision space the most effective place for children to feel secure and to feel good about making their own choices. And him saying that actually caused me to reflect on that as well. You know, how can we facilitate choice in an effective way? And I do think a big part of this is the organization of the room, you know, making sure all of your resources have their space, things are labeled so that children are independent and they feel safe making those choices. They know where to get the pens from, they know where to go and get the stickle bricks from. And, you know, so setting it up in an organized way does support that. So if we think about our EYFS staples, so I've just chosen 3 to kind of explore. So writing, sound, and water, okay? So we need to really think about why we are putting things or planning things into our continuous provision areas, okay? Why am I putting this in the sound? Why will it support children to develop skills? Why will these particular resources engage the children so that they make that progress? And we're really thinking about the opportunities that are being afforded for physicality, that physical development, and engagement and curiosity. It does really wind me up. I've had this comment before where someone said, oh, all they do in early years, you know, they just play with sand. And it's like, no, absolutely not. And also, even if they did, sound is such a powerful resource, isn't it? You know, even just the notion of pouring sand, you know, that's supporting their mobility, their joint mobility, and things like that will support their writing. So yeah, we're just thinking about why, really purposefully thinking about why we're putting things. Are these objects in the sound tray or in the writing area going to promote physicality, engagement, and curiosity? And I think sometimes if we put too much in the sound or water tray, we close off the opportunity for children to bring their individuality to the provision. When we instead put resources around those areas that are easily accessible, then we open up the possibilities. Writing area is a big one, and I think we'll have this a lot with senior leadership teams coming in and trying to look for the learning that's happening in early years. And I would urge all of you to, you know, make sure that your senior leadership team know the importance of that physicality for writing and to look for those opportunities when they're coming into our rooms. You know, when we think about the pressures of our system, you know, and in an adult's mind, writing may not be happening in the sound tray, or it might not be happening in the construction area, but really it kind of is. That is the basis for writing. And without that, children won't be able to hold a pen, you know. The importance of physical development, that core strength, that control, even just our finger grip, you know. So our provision needs to allow for movement and physical interaction. So yeah, it's important that they see those things too. This, I think we can all relate to this. This is the yin and yang of sand. And I thought this was really funny and super relatable as an early years practitioner. So as soon as I hear the word sand, I don't envisage a white beach lapped by crystal water, fringed by docilely nodding palm trees, whilst Kol's lager is being sipped without a care in the world. Instead, I think of dustpan and brush and waste of money. Sometimes I felt like taking 2 £20 notes, screwing them up and putting them straight in the bin, rather than spending it on sand, because in a short amount of time, that's where the majority of sand is heading anyway. Anywhere other than actually in the sand tray. And yet deep down, I appreciate the brilliance of sand. It's a staple of continuous provision. And so it presents itself as something that has to be put out in the morning. I thought that was quite funny. It definitely, yeah, got me thinking. Okay, so when we're thinking about our learning landscape, so our continuous provision space, there are some key things that we want to keep in mind. We want it to be large scale, to foster collaboration and interaction. And don't get me wrong, everyone's space will look totally different. Some of you will have smaller rooms and things like that, but it doesn't necessarily need to be massive, but it's how are those spaces lending themselves to that collaboration. For example, not having your construction area kind of in a corner. Think about having it in a bit more of an open space, maybe close to the carpet, so that children can kind of extend that and work together. Set out, not set up some areas. So thinking about, rather than a set up thing, think about setting out. So having a range of accessible resources nearby and not always feeling the need to theme different areas. Giving children that opportunity to bring their own skills and their own choice to the area. And that also doesn't confine the play only to certain children. In fact, it opens up those areas. And the more open some of those continuous provision areas can be, the more trajectories we make available for children. Thinking, Sarah, you've got your hand up. Do you want to say something?
I didn't know if we were going to interject or if we have breakout rooms.
Yeah, no, go for it. Love this. No, this is great. Thank you so much.
You're doing really well. I didn't want to interject, but I was like,
no, thank you. Thanks so much.
Just that notion of not having to set up every day, and that at our schools, Avanti Meadows and Avanti Brook, it's actually been interesting post-COVID, having to teach the children how to access things that aren't just put on a table for them. They actually had to be shown how to pull out drawers and how to like go into the shelving, and like if it's in the room you can use it, it's okay to do it, and to be creative.
Absolutely. And kind of having things overly set up sometimes does limit that. And actually, when we're opening up those possibilities, like Sarah said, children then are independent in their learning, and we can see the metacognition in there as well. They're working out what to use. They know where to get it. They know where to put it back. They're so much more capable than sometimes they're given credit for, kids, and that learning can really, really shine when we kind of don't overcomplicate our continuous provision. Thank you so much for that. The last thing that we kind of want to think about is the relationship between the areas. And I know Emily and I spoke about this when we were setting up our classrooms, like the feng shui of your room, basically. How do the areas link to each other? Areas that lend themselves to each other, maybe being a bit closer. So like I said earlier, maybe having your construction area a bit closer to the carpet so that can kind of spread out if it needs to, if they need more space. Having the creative area next to the role play area, so children can make props for their role play, things like that. You probably, if you think about it in the reverse, you probably wouldn't put your Play-Doh station near your sand tray, because we all know where that's going to end up. So just thinking about that relationship. And I think as well, one thing that I've tried to do a lot the last couple of years is almost not having too much out, not having like 50 colouring pencils out or 50 Play-Doh cutters. I think as early as practitioners, it's such a resource heavy phase, so we're used to just having loads of stuff around. But when we actually minimize that number of stuff, it actually gives children the opportunity to experience things together, and also to share and take turns, which we know is really, really difficult. Okay, guys, so we're going to think about how children use these areas in your rooms if you are an early years practitioner, and that kind of index of possibility that we were talking about. So I'd love to hear some reflections on this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put you into breakout rooms for five minutes, and just thinking about how children are using these areas in your setting. Thinking about, you can take a picture of this as well, how you plan for your sand and water tray, what resources do you have around these areas, and things like that. I mean, I'll just give you an example. The other day, the children were meant to be practicing their sound in the sand tray. Did one of them do that? Not a single one. It was like that was not what they were doing. And what ended up happening was them making like a dinosaur land. And I think it just made me think, like, maybe it's important that we have to kind of shed our adult expectations of what continuous provision should be and look like. And I think sometimes there is this danger. Pinterest is such an amazing resource, but it can be, you know, that can be a danger of Pinterest, is that we're putting things out with our adult lens. You know, it looks nice. We think SLT will come in and think that that looks like real learning because they're finding numbers in the sand tray. But trust your early years knowledge, okay? Go back to the why. Why are we putting these things out? Yeah, that was a bit of a rant, but okay, I'm going to break you into breakout rooms. Hopefully this happens seamlessly, and I'll bring everyone back in 5 minutes and we can just share some ideas if that's okay. Thank you so much. Okay, I think sorry guys. For some reason I can only see 2 breakout rooms, which is probably a bit too big. Here we go. Oh guys, I don't know why this isn't working. Has everyone been given a breakout room yet? No. Okay, are we happy to just put our hands up and think about this together? I'm sorry, I don't know why that's not working. So maybe if we start off with the first one, like how do children most often, like how do they most use your sand tray and water tray? Is it with objects in there, or is it kind of containers? Is it pipes and things like that? Sophie, thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you. Thank you so much.
I think my children, particularly with the sand tray, are really into like wet sand play at the minute, and mixing and pouring and piling. So I also find, because I cleared my sand tray out this half term, so I found many things in there. So it's a lot of exploring with mixing and manipulating with their hands and things like that. I have I've organised a kind of an open-ended resource kind of area where they can get like their spades and sieves and containers. I've got like sea creatures and things like that under there, so I'll find a lot of like those objects as well as like stones and more natural materials. They tend to go for the natural materials like the stones and gems and things like that because it's a bit more interesting to find in there. So it's definitely, I think they definitely go for kind of like, yeah, like I said, the more natural materials and the scooping and the digging and the patting and all those things. In my water area, I mean I keep my sand tray a little bit further away from my water area because I've got a slightly longer space. And in my water area, I've got loads of like old pipes, like Hoover tubes, and they love them because I've got a few children that love flooding with water. They love filling up buckets. They love filling up big containers, and then the whole pouring element. So yeah, like I find that they're more into like the tubes and the buckets and things like that. And often the water will become quite muddy because they'll kind of expand that into the mud area. I actually don't mind that because that's kind of what they're exploring. So I mean, it's very rare to find the water like super clear and stuff like that. I wouldn't expect that. Yeah. But yeah, love the splashing, they love the pouring and the flooding and all of that. So that's kind of
Thank you so much for sharing, and I will really feel your vibe there with the sound and water. They just love that together, and it is a bit of a nightmare mix for us as adults, but you know, they're exploring so much, so it's great. Fantastic. And if someone could just share if they plan their sound or water tray, or how do you plan your sound and water tray? Shreya, thank you so much.
Sorry, I think I clicked the hand like too many times. It wasn't
Okay.
working.
You're good, thank you.
So we plan ours around our shared story. So every 2 weeks we have a new shared story. So we'll put a different type of media in the sand or water, depending on what our story is. For example, we've got the Diwali story this week. So we've put tweezers and beads in, and my teacher partner's put Diwali patterns in hers, and I've put Rangoli patterns where children have to tweeze out beads. So we change it depending on the story, but I think sometimes we just go with the children's interests as well. Like when we did the color monsters, my children were really interested in playing with the color monsters, so we got the toys and we put in like Orbeez and stuff for them to mix, and we used that as a fine motor activity. So I just put jars and Orbeez in there, and they were mixing colors into the different jars. So we change it depending on the stories, but the interest, and to stop them mixing things. For example, in the sand I put colored paint, but I said to them on the first day, like, you're not allowed to touch it. I just put clipboards there, and I said you can draw what you can see, but you're not allowed to touch it. And if you touch it, then like we can't have this out all the time, because then I put diggers and stuff in there and they got buried, like when the children did play with them and things like that. So we kind of had an observation station at the beginning, and then said to them, okay, now you can get messy and you can do your role play. And we put keywords around the table, and like when our teachers were walking around the tables, like we were telling them, like we were engaging in dialogue with them, and then they were imitating us and things like that. So we thought that was pretty effective.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think it's really kind of that careful balance between having those enhancements to your provision to support your units of work, like Diwali and everything, but also taking their lead on things. So that's really, really helpful. Thank you so much. Someone else put their hand up, I think. It's gone now. Just shout out if you want to share anything else. No, I don't think so. The last question, Sarah. Was it Sarah or Sophia? One of you two?
I clicked my hand too many times as well. Very eager.
Okay.
Looks like I'm going crazy.
I've done that before and got caught out. I left my hand up, and someone was like, "Oh, Tiva."
Yeah.
It's like, what? What's going on?
Sorry.
Hand
raising etiquette out the window. I think you kind of drawing on keeping the kids' interest, but also making sure that you have your mainstay pieces. So we do set up, because we're a new school, so we've had to kind of feel out the space a little bit. So we do have like a tough tray that we'll put up that links to our story. But generally speaking, we do, especially for this half term where we're just kind of watching to see the kids' interest and how they use everything. We've just kind of been keeping the same stuff there, and then using us as like the learning tools to help move learning on. And then from there, once we've done our baselines, we'll start kind of changing things around. But we've been looking at the early excellence, continuous provision planners, and the resources to kind of keep there. Because again, like you said, if you're constantly changing things over and putting new things in, it doesn't give children that chance to actually like deepen their understanding and use the same materials or tools in different ways. Absolutely. So sometimes like less is more.
Yeah, definitely. And having those same things out as well, you know, we're under such pressure to make it look different every day again, you know, but having the same things out, it actually helps children to refine those processes of learning. You know, they're figuring it out, and we need to give them the opportunity to figure it out and to work out, you know, how to use this, what they can do with it, how to come back and approach the task with a different kind of methodology, you know, all of that. And that is really our characteristics of effective learning, which is just so fundamental to what we do. I'll just touch on the last question briefly about our timetables. How do our timetables show that we value children's choice. And I'll give you an example of reception. In my last school, reception used to go out into the playground for playtime with Key Stage 1. And we removed that because it was interrupting free flow. It was interrupting that really rich continuous provision that was happening. So I think that it's really, really important that we think about our timetables and how much time are we offering children for that uninterrupted continuous provision, where it's not super starty stoppy. You know, we need to give them time to do these things, to play, which leads me really nicely into my next point, that really it's all about the power of play, and it's about harnessing the power of play in learning and development through our provision. So again, thinking about that choice, that index of possibility, and really just thinking about how our continuous provision is celebrating the magic that is play. So there is loads of murky definitions on play, but we can see on this play continuum that playful learning happens in various stages of play with various adult interactions. It's important that if we're not playing side by side with a child, then that doesn't mean they're not learning. They are still learning. They are learning through that play. And we also know that in early years, it's important to have that healthy mixture of free child-initiated play as well as that direct instruction. And sometimes children will lead the play, sometimes we will step in and add our knowledge, but we're always constantly valuing what they are thinking and their learning, their individual learning process. So if we're talking about pure play, we're really thinking of play that is totally chosen by the child, okay? None of our limitations on it. And in a way, accepting pure play can also be quite uncomfortable. There's no parameters for us as educators and teachers to think about things. And that can be really overwhelming and really daunting. I know for me, it really is, because I like to have things really planned out. But, you know, having reflected on it, sometimes we do just need to take a step back, you know. And I love this quote by Bondioli, that the child is the teacher of play. Yeah, so we have autonomy and choice being crucial there as well. This is from Tapestry's Guide to Self-Directed Neurodivergent Play, which is an amazing read. You can find it on the Tapestry website. They've got these kind of beginner guides to things, and they're incredible. They're really easy to digest. But I thought this just summed up, you know, so much of what we do in early years, the heart of what we do in early years. And I just wish that other people around the schools could understand this a little bit more. Play is serious yet not serious, trivial yet profound, imaginative and spontaneous yet bound by rules and anchored in the real world. It is childish yet underlies many of the greatest accomplishments. From an evolutionary perspective, play is nature's way of ensuring that children and other young mammals will learn what they must do to survive and do well. From another perspective, play is a gift that makes life on Earth worthwhile. And I just think that beautifully captures play and beautifully captures the power of what we do as early years practitioners. So play matters, and there is research to back this up. Okay, we know, you know, that there is a significant influence of a child's early experiences on their development. Really robust evidence from 2 major studies support the case for a play-based and interactive approach in early years. We also know that learning is interconnected. Lessons from neuroscience tell us that learning is dynamic and it's not easily divisible into separate independent mental processes. And really, what continuous provision is the optimum place for that kind of interconnected and dynamic learning. It really, really is. Where else can children be chatting away, pouring sand, filling up buckets, developing their spatial awareness, developing their social skills? You know, it's such a wonderful landscape for learning from a cognitive perspective, our continuous provision. We live in a social world, and children need the space to make these important social connections and navigate relationships with each other and the world around them. And we also know that play is children's way of emotionally connecting to their experiences as well. So it's important that they have the space to do this. Children are born to play. There's a really interesting study done on babies, and they were called scientists in the crib due to their natural curiosity and intrigue. And I think that's so interesting and so true, you know. Yeah. Looking at animals too, so really play seems to be a natural inclination across the animal kingdom, at helping species to learn, grow and thrive. And you know, although natural and somewhat instinctive, play must be supported by other things as well, like our learning environment, how we set it up, our high quality interactions, obviously our assessment and subject knowledge as well. I think in early years it's a bit of a challenge for us, I think, as practitioners, where we spend so much time defending play, and this idea of, oh, it's just early years, you know, or you know, this isn't relevant for you because you're in early years, you know, that kind of language, and it can feel really, really isolating. But I think play can be viewed with such an adult lens, you know, we work, then we play. But we know as early years practitioners that play is learning. It's not something that's separate from learning. It's not a break from learning. It is learning. This kind of also made me think about childhood, this term childhood. And again, this has come from Greg Bottrell, where he advocates the idea of actually rethinking early years and not calling it early years anymore, but calling it childhood. And reframing that language. And I think the importance there is that childhood also doesn't end after early years. Okay, childhood is that period where children are who they are, not who they're told to be. Okay, and it is that time where human beings develop their physical bodies and their mental abilities. It's also a time of freedom from the responsibilities of adult life. Children deserve to play and live out their childhood, and I think it's important that we remember that. I also think this is a really interesting question, and I wanted to get some of your feedback on it. You can pop it in the chat or just stick your hand up. But when do you think childhood ends? Feel free to stick it in the chat if it's any ideas. It's never a silly idea. Oh, I love that. Whenever you want it to. Yes, I love that. Childhood should never end. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Continuing into adulthood, definitely. Yeah, these are great. Yeah, always looking to find ways to play. And I think that's right. We need to kind of hold on to that, and hold on to those childhood things in ourselves as well. We all have a child within. Absolutely, we do. I love it. This is so early years. I love that. So yeah, childhood doesn't end after early years. They don't just finish, you know, finish early years and then boom, okay, yep, they can suddenly self-regulate, and oh look, oh, they can suddenly hold their pencil properly. It doesn't happen like that. And I think that's a challenge for us as early years practitioners as well, is to kind of shift the narrative a bit, you know. Thank you so much. And there's also, you know, the challenge of year one readiness, but again, talking about that childhood. Children have a right to live out their childhood and to play. You know, they really, really do. And we need to try as hard as we can. I know it's so difficult in schools as well to, you know, resist some of this year one readiness pressure. We know that transition into year one is really difficult. There is a big shift in teaching and learning. So it's important that you work with your year one teachers and your year one colleagues to make that as smooth as possible. But, you know, also appreciate the importance of those non-cognitive skills in early years: resilience, motivation, self-esteem, self-regulation, and where best to develop this than in continuous provision. This was really interesting. A study done by Heckman demonstrated the significant role of non-cognitive skills over cognitive skills in shaping labour market outcomes, which I just thought was quite interesting. The evidence for play is strong, so trust your EYFS professional knowledge. You are all amazing. We will journey a little bit now into beyond play. What else do we need to make our provision purposeful? We know that play is powerful, and a provision that harnesses that play allows children to shine. But we also know that that approach needs to be underpinned by our professional knowledge, the context of our children, and the importance of also using assessment and interactions to ensure it's really, really effective. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that our provision is helping children to learn and develop to their full potential. So for our provision to be purposeful, we need other important things too that will further allow play and continuous provision to come alive in learning. High quality interactions, our learning environment, and our assessments and reflections. I'm going to show you a video. Hopefully this does work. You can pop any thoughts or reflections in the chat. It is a 7-minute long video, but I hope you enjoy it. It really shows the power of our interaction and the early years. Is that working? Yeah. Yay. Okay, that's great. Okay, I thought that was just such an incredible video. Thank you for the comment. Yeah, it's a beautiful and insightful video. It really is, and she's clearly had some incredible interactions in her first 5 years to be 7 years old and doing that. But it does show the impact that it does have, our interactions on children's development. And we know that newborn babies engage in interaction with their caregivers, connecting through eye contact, noises, smiles, and everything like that. This is from the same study that I quoted earlier, but Gopnik again said that the greatest mind that has ever existed, the most powerful learning machine in the universe, is a baby's brain. But we also know that brains are built, not born. So nurturing those responsive interactions are really vital for healthy neural development. So thinking about our high quality interactions, you know, they're not easy to do well. It's hard to tune into the brain of a 4 or 5 year old, or even younger, 3 years old, 2 years old, or some of you are in nurseries. And it is quite a skill that we have to have as early as practitioners. And I think a distinction is sometimes drawn between talking with children and simply talking to children. Talking to children tends to be more passive, while talking with children is based on their immediate experiences and activities, and it's likely to be more effective. So we'll just look at a couple now, which is guided interaction and sustained shared thinking as two modes of effective interaction. So guided interaction, this is where, again, it's all based around discussion and effective questioning. But, you know, the adults are always carefully considering the child's level of development and their interests and using effective questioning and discussion. So again, talking with them, not talking to them. Sustained shared thinking involves 2 or more people working together to solve a problem, clarify an issue, evaluate activities, or extend a narrative. So in this, all parties are contributing to the interaction, but one party in the interaction, i.e. us as the adult, is aimed at extending and developing children's thinking. Again, it is about talking with the child, not just to the child, and really using our professional knowledge and that power of effective questioning. This is really useful. This I got from the Preparing for Literacy guidance document by the EEF. So definitely go on to there if it interests you, but I just find these sentence stems for me as an adult really, really helpful, so that I'm kind of moving away from, oh, what's that? You know, and thinking more about those probing questions that will develop and deepen understanding. So these are examples of effective approaches in sustained shared thinking. And yeah, just some really helpful sentence stems for us as adults as well. So you can find that in the Preparing for Literacy guidance document by the EEF. They have also developed this, which I think Charisse shared with us on our PLN, by the EEF again. And this is a really evidence-informed approach to thinking about our interactions. It's a really useful and simple model to structure those interactions, and to share with your team to reflect on these. I think it's quite helpful to just have this up in the classroom, even if you've got kind of supply in there, or supply TAs who have never been in early years, or even your SLT who are coming in to get involved, hopefully, in your continuous provision, thinking about this. So yeah, it's sharing attention, responding, expanding, and that conversation as well. There is a video, but I'm probably going to move on. Just I'm scared we'll run out of time. So that being said, we also need to be mindful of when to take a step back. So interactions are so important, we know that, but we also need to be careful of not hijacking the play, which again is really hard for us when we're looking at things with our adult brains. You know, oh, we need to be there, otherwise we're not pushing the learning forward, and this, but sometimes we need to use that professional knowledge and in the moment assessment to decide whether we go in and co-play and support and extend that learning, or whether in fact us going in there will just totally kill the vibe. Which I've had that so many times before, where like trying to get involved in the play and then all the kids are suddenly like, why are you here? You've just ruined our fun. So just kind of thinking about that as well. Julie Fisher explores this concept of interacting or interfering. So you can look into that a bit more if that interests you. But yeah, just being mindful of knowing when to step back and not kill the playful vibes. So our learning environment, thinking again, looking back, we've kind of discussed some of this when thinking about our continuous provision. This is taken from Birth to 5 Matters, outlining effective ways to foster learning in our classroom environments. So we know these environments support children and their individual and diverse development needs, environments that offer security, comfort, choice, and children's learning is best supported when they have opportunities which allow for movement and action, creativity and imagination, independence and collaboration. We know that time outside is hugely important as well, and those kind of use of open-ended resources too. And we know that within an effective environment, knowledgeable practitioners are optimizing that learning of every child. So I just took some key headings from that, you know, inclusive, comfort and choice, movement, collaboration, creativity, open-ended and outside. So just thinking about these different things, if we, for instance, think about comfort and choice, how can we give that to children through our provision? For me, I think what's so effective is just having really well organized resources and your classroom and your space being really well organized, a big focus on tidy up time routines at the beginning, and that will give children that comfort, that security, that choice to independently access things and put them away and know when to grab something from this area. And it also helps our comfort, I think, as early years practitioners, that things can be tidied away properly. Again, movement, those experiences of movement, ease of movement through the rooms. Can they get to resources easily and safely? Can they move between those areas that are kind of linking together easily? Collaboration, thinking about space where you can foster that. So having opportunities where children can actually face each other while they're doing an activity, that will promote lots of talk and lots of dialogue. Where children can kind of face each other. Creativity, you know, role play, and so much of early years is about creativity, but the role play area is such a powerful resource to push forward that creativity, and having a well-resourced creative area that allows children to take things in their own direction. And I think having those open-ended resources as well, just like loose parts, shells, all those natural resources we were talking about earlier. And it just made me think of an example where the children were kind of grabbing some blankets that were near the reading area, and they ended up making a den under my desk. And initially I was like, I don't know about this. Then I was like, you know what, let them do it. And they got the blankets from the reading area and they made a whole den, and then they went and got the food from the role play area, and then it was like a picnic, and then they went and got the babies, and then it became like, oh, mommy's putting the babies to bed and things like this. And, you know, you should have seen under my desk was just chaos, mayhem, resources from everywhere. But, you know, they had the ability to go and select those resources from different parts of the room. They knew where to get it from to elevate the play. So just thinking about how we can foster these things in our learning environment as well. Assessment and reflection. We also know that this is really, really important. Importance of our ongoing observational assessments of children, and I don't mean just like recorded observations, I just mean what we do naturally, and our reflective practice. Again, just maybe a note about observations, again, really thinking about why we're doing them. We should think about it maybe not as observations, but as discoveries. What are we learning about our children in that moment? And kind of move away from the idea of observations as a super tick box exercise, which we know it can be in early years. So yeah, I like that, thinking about it as discoveries, not observations, but that is the importance of our assessment, and that helps us to evaluate our provision, to make sure it's purposeful, to be able to tune into their interests and work out how we can modify to maximize progress and learning, really. And again, you know, reflecting on our practice and our provision helps us to better understand what children need from our provision. This was taken from the Lego Foundation's white paper that reviews all the evidence for play. This is also a really great kind of exploration into the research behind play. And this is the characteristics of playful experiences. So how do we know that learning and provision is happening? Okay, optimal learning through play happens when it has the following characteristics: when it is joyful, socially interactive, actively engaging, meaningful, and iterative. I'm going to show you this video as well, and this video shows these characteristics of playful learning in action. But the reason that I really love this video is because it shows the universality of play, and again, that concept of childhood not ending after early years. And maybe this actually, you know, might invoke some thought experiments for pedagogy beyond early years. I don't want to go too political, but, you know, maybe we need to think about the power of play in other key stages as well. Let me know if there's any issues. So again, yeah, just another really lovely video that again shows play in different contexts as well, not just how, you know, in our early years classrooms in England and the approach that we follow, but also internationally, that power of play and those playful characteristics. So imagine you walk into an EYFS room where the characteristics of playful learning are taking place. I just like you to take a second and imagine what you would see, what you would hear, and what you would feel. So for me, you know, I think you walk into a room and you can feel the friendships and you can feel the positive relationships around. You can see adults involved. Walking into a room and kind of it spurs me being like, oh, I want to get stuck in. I want to get involved in that. And hear lots of language and laughter. So feel free to share some ideas about what you would feel or what you would see, what you would hear in a classroom where you can see lots of playful learning taking place. Any ideas? A sense of children feeling happy, definitely, and you'll feel that when you walk in. That joy, would you feel that joy? Absolutely, that you feel welcome. You hear lots of great dialogue, absolutely, definitely. And I think that's a big thing, the joy. You know, you can feel it when you walk into an early years classroom. It's overflowing with joy, and that's down to you guys and the positive provision that you create and that space you create for children to experience that joy in childhood. Absolutely, children accessing provision, children are engaged, strong conversation, imagination, it's exciting. You're looking around and you're looking at all these things that are promoting curiosity. Yep, children not hanging around the empty spaces in the room looking bored, definitely. Lots of questioning, independence, absolutely. Amazing. Yep. Busy. Yep. We actually call it busy time in at Avanti Gardens when they're engaging with continuous provision. We call it busy time, which is quite nice. Creativity, lots of positive praise by adults and children bigging each other up as well. That's huge. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of those ideas, guys. I really appreciate it. So looking at reflective practice, this has come from Greg Bottrell's co-play planning pack on his website. I would really recommend trying to order this through school, and it's £15, I think, for the co-play planning pack, and it's all kind of digital resources. So however you do your ordering through school, I would really, really recommend this. It's a really amazing pack with lots of amazing ideas that you can share with your team as well. And this was a really interesting one. This is his dinner party provision, and it's a really useful reflective exercise that can be used within your team. And it's basically questions to ask the resources that have a place in our learning landscape. So you're actually, sounds a bit crazy, but asking the resources the questions. So thinking about maybe, like, I thought about sticky notes in the mark making area. So I did this exercise with sticky notes. So bear with me while I do this. It might be a little bit cringy, but we go. So who are you? I am sticky notes. Okay, great. Why are you here? I'm here to give children a different place to mark make. How many of you are there? There's 6 packets of us in the writing area. So again, this question, just thinking about, do you have too many of that thing out? You know, thinking about the number of it. Who do you know at the party? Oh, I know the pens and I know the pencils and the markers. I know quite a lot of the things in the mark making area. How might children use you? They might use me to label things, or they love to use me as stickers to give their friends. Okay, amazing. How might I use you? Oh, you could encourage children to use me to label their Lego designs. So that is kind of the dinner party provision that you can use. So if you're thinking about some of the resources that you've got in your provision and you're like, is this, thinking about that why again? Why am I putting this out? This is a really useful thing to do. So you could do this in your phase meetings or something and pick out a couple of resources to do this with. Yeah, take your resources to a dinner party. We have kind of run out of time for this. So what I'll do is I will stick this in the chat or try and email it round. It's an outdoor learning environment audit. And I know this is really the toughest season in early years, and the outdoor areas really become our arch nemesis. And it's an absolute nightmare when it's rainy and it's soggy and it's windy. But I think it's maybe a good time to actually reflect on our continuous provision, our outdoor provision, and what us as adults can kind of offer in those areas. So I will email this audit out, and it's just really basic, but just gets the cogs turning when we're thinking about our outdoor provision as well. And maybe it's a good time to think about it as we go into winter, when really I just want to put the outdoor area on the back burner until spring, but you know, we keep moving forward. So really what we've looked at is purposeful provision being underpinned by the magic and the benefits of play. But we also know that this must be supported by our learning environments, our interactions, and our assessments and reflective practice. Here is some further reading, and again, I can organise to email out links to all of these as well. The Lego Foundation's website, the Learning Through Play tab there, has some amazing research papers on there, and they're real advocates for play. So there's lots of amazing stuff on there as well. Greg Botchell's website has some wonderful ideas, and then there's some really good evidence reviews there as well that I've used. We're going to do a bit of popcorn, maybe raise your hand first, but just to share a few ideas, and this doesn't need to be linked at all to anything that we've done, but I just hope that we can all leave maybe with a new interesting idea. So again, it can be something totally random that works in your classroom, literally anything. I've got a few ideas here that I can kick us off with. So first, helicopter stories. Thumbs up if you've heard of helicopter stories. Amazing. They are absolutely brilliant, and feel free to pop me an email to find out more about that. But that book, Princesses, Dragons and Helicopter Stories, kind of unpicks that approach. Sophie, did you have a question or anything?
I'm so sorry. I'm challenged when it comes to IT. So that was me thumbs upping, but I'll put my hand down.
Nice. Okay, I love it. Perfect. So helicopter stories are absolutely fantastic, and that really celebrates storytelling and you know, our budding young performers, maybe some of them as well. Explorify, I don't know if any of you have heard of Explorify. It is a website that has some really great activities, like a zoom in, zoom out kind of situation that's great for promoting dialogue. We use that a lot as our morning challenge, and they absolutely love it. And the language that comes out of that is really, really cool. Number Talk, where you can see all those cakes. It's called NT Images, and there's lots of images that promote number talk. So what numbers you can see, but that's really amazing because it really supports their subitizing. I found that really useful. And if you have it up on the interactive whiteboard, they can come up and kind of circle the numbers that they can see. But that's a really good one as well that I found really effective. Hoop Group is something that I just came up with. It was so random, but basically you'd have maybe 4 groups of children all sat round a hula hoop. So it's like small circles, basically, like small circle time. And I would give each group a stimulus. So maybe it's different pictures of characters in a story or something like that. You can choose. It can kind of be made into anything you want it to be. But the idea is that they're working together in their hoop group as a team, and then at the end each hoop group will stand up and do a mini presentation to the rest of the class. It's something that's incredibly brutal in the first couple of terms of reception or in your provision, because it's that they can't share, they can't take turns, they're like grabbing the paper and snatching it off each other and things. But I promise you, if you persevere, it becomes really, really effective and really seamless as well. So that's quite a good one too. I don't know if anyone else has got any ideas that they'd like to share, anything that's been working really well in your class last term, or anything you plan to do. Any ideas are welcome. I know that's a bit of a big question, but anything that pops into your head. Dwijal?
Hi. Can you hear me? Hi. I think puppets works really well. So yeah, it encourages more language, more words. So like once a week we are using puppets, and we are letting children have it, and there's like lots of communication.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, puppets are such a huge resource. They definitely do support with that storytelling as well. Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. Emily.
Hello. I've done something before. I had a little bit of training on it, and it was called Philosophy for Children. I think it was P for C, and that was a lot of like just a really short snapshot for like would you rather, and then the children justifying their answers as to why they think that, and that's really, I found it really useful, like seasonal, topical. When it got to Christmas, would you rather be an elf or a reindeer? And they'd say, oh, an elf, but then they needed to justify as to why, and it was just a really good way of getting them to think further than just their answer.
Amazing. Thank you so much. No, that's great. That's really, really great. And then that's also supporting them to use those connectives in their communication and language as well. And it gives an opportunity for you to model that thinking as well. So that's great. We've also got here in the chat a storybook vote section. Amazing. Children are reminded to go and put a cube in their choice of book cup. I love that idea. That's really nice. Again, also that interconnected learning, because you can really weave in maths there, can't you? Pobble, a bit like Explorify. I've never heard of Pobble. That sounds amazing. I'll definitely check it out. Oh, it's amazing. Yep, and then P for C in my last school. It's a good way of building talk. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing. I'm going to end with a little pep talk for you, and hopefully this leaves you feeling good.